And good evening, I'm Maggie Vespa. Today's protests were explosive at times, but compared to past events, there were far fewer violent confrontations. So first, we're going to set the stage. The original event was pegged as a freedom march and a campaign event for conservative Senate candidate in Washington and Patriot Prayer leader Joey Gibson, a candidate who said on Facebook supporters should bring guns. Counter-protests sprang up soon after that, and police vowed to seize any and all weapons. We have KGW team coverage of this day. Pat Doris and Christine Pitawanich have been downtown through it all. So we're going to start with Christine because in part, Christine, it looked like counter-protesters from Sky 8 may have outnumbered those there for the Patriot Prayer rally.
Maggie, it seemed that way for sure for a little while, but from my vantage point, sometimes it was difficult to tell which group outnumbered the other group. Now at 5 o'clock, though, I mean, that event, that rally ended at 4 p.m., but you can see counter-protesters still here at the corner of NATO and Salmon. These protesters, of course, sticking around because there are still some Patriot Prayer folks here. For the two counter-protests, though, organized on Facebook, nearly 500 people responded saying they would attend. But the day began at 10:30 this morning with counter-protesters rallying at City Hall. By 11:30, the official event was done, but hundreds began marching to the Portland waterfront in opposition to the Patriot Prayer rally. Often, Portland police stood in between the two groups, acting as a barrier. They were, for the most part, successful in keeping the two groups separated. A couple small scuffles did break out, but it wasn't until police told counter-protesters that they had to leave that things got a little chaotic around here. Protesters did not leave, and then police say rocks and other items were being thrown at them too. So to disperse the crowd, they fired flashbangs and used some sort of substance that made it a little harder to breathe out here. Some counter-protesters say they feel the police response was heavy-handed. Others say they understand why police used the tactics they did.
I just feel like we have to show up. It's astounding. Every week, every day, it seems to be worse, not getting better. You think it's going to hit bottom, and I just think at a certain point we have to make a stand.
Love is and joy and equality are all possible if we are just able to kind of keep everyone's perspectives in mind.
And overall, like I said, from my vantage point, things could have been much worse, especially with so many people. Back out here live, I did see an arrest. I saw counter-protesters throw bottles and other items, people with injuries as well. But overall, this rally wasn't nearly as bad as other protests that we've seen in Portland. If you'd like to see what we saw on the ground, we did categorize it, or we did document it rather, on Facebook Live. So just search KGW on Facebook and you can find that video there. Back to you.
Yeah, Christine, you've been covering it in depth live for us all day. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Well, meanwhile, the earlier part of the Patriot Prayer rally appeared mostly peaceful. Pat Doris talked with Patriot Prayer leader and once again Washington Senate candidate Joey Gibson. So Pat Gibson had a message for his supporters.
Right, Maggie, and a lot has been said about the people that Gibson attracts, but while I was around him, his message was relatively mainstream, very positive and upbeat, and not aggressive. The Patriot Prayer side was outnumbered and started their day on the waterfront park side of the street. While police had set up a barricade section of the park and prepared to check for weapons, no one went there. Instead, they stayed on the east side of NATO, facing off against counter-protesters on the other side. Joey Gibson, who lives in Vancouver and organized the gathering, gave a brief rallying talk to his supporters.
Get together, build a family. You don't even have to do what we do, but go find something and change the world. That's the spirit that we got to bring back into this country. We're missing it. We're missing the fire that is in the heart. And I have missed that for 32 years. And now I'm here living my dream because I'm actually living the way that God built me. To bring people out here, like all you guys. There's always a temptation to divide amongst us. You guys know who you are in this crowd here today. We have some dividers, it's okay. Let's learn, let's grow, let's be mature adults, and let's put our differences to the side. Put it to the side, because no one cares. No one cares about your drama. No one cares about your complaints. That's why you won't hear most of us complain. So let's come together, let's unite, and let's take on this great fight that we have in front of us. Because at the end of the day, it's not even about those punks over there. It's not about that. They're just an obstacle. We got to get them out of the way so we can truly march the streets with thousands of people, so we can actually come together with liberals, have conversations, learn and grow. That's the real obstacle.
Then he talked with reporters and ripped into Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, who said he did not want today's rally in his city.
Well, we're used to it. I mean, that's just the way it is. Eventually we can calm it down, de-escalate, and eventually the people can come together. That's the goal.
What's your message today? What is the message that you want to share with people of Portland and people of Vancouver?
Well, the number one message is to put pressure on Ted Wheeler to do his job. We have people on the left and right, both sides of the streets, that have major problems with Ted Wheeler. I think we need to address that first. But I also want to inspire people to come out in places like Portland. Even if the city hates you, they think they hate you, they despise you, it's okay to come out and show who you are. It's okay to do that.
I also talked with a supporter who drove here with friends from Yakima and the Tri-Cities. They are part of the 3%er movement.
Some of those guys, they've split some of our members' lips open with crowbars taped under their shirts, throwing rocks. And then with this one, there's rumors and conspiracies that they're going to be bringing firearms to this event. So what we have done is we are prepared for the worst, but we're hoping for the best. We do have ballistic gear on, but we do not have any firearms. All of our gear is primarily for medical attention.
All right, and since his group is the Patriot Prayer group, Joey Gibson did lead a prayer with his organization. We just wanted to give you one last live look from Salmon Spring Fountain. You can see police still here, but much more relaxed than they've been for much of the day, and it's probably because the crowd on the other side, the counter-protesters, much smaller than it was earlier today. It really was a very sizable contingent, but while there were some arrests, certainly none of the violence that a lot of people, I think, feared was going to happen. Back to you.
Yeah, and Pat, before we let you go, I do want to ask you, we saw sort of a couple of scuffles. We don't want to say quite fights, but again, like you said, nothing like we've seen in the past. So did anyone else tell you why they kind of came wearing helmets and tactical gear? I mean, they looked sort of ready for a fight.
Right. Well, we asked Gibson about that, actually, and his answer was an analogy to a motorcycle rider. He says people wear helmets there not expecting to have trouble, but just in case. And he said, based on what we've experienced in the past, this seems prudent. So that was his take on it.
Okay. And then one more question, then I'll let you go. We heard flashbangs. Do you have any idea what happened to spark that first flashbang from police?
Well, it was, as Christine said, I think I was on the other side of the street from her, and police had ordered the protesters, the counter-protesters, to clear, and they just weren't. And so it looked for a moment like there was an opening where the two crowds could have come together, which I think would have been a very, very bad thing. So police reinforced that quickly, tried to move the protesters. When they didn't, they started the flashbangs. And as people were running up the streets, I mean, there were clubs, there were rocks, there were all kinds of things left there on the street. So there was mostly vocal protesting, but I think some folks were ready for more than that today.
Yeah, we definitely saw some objects flying in the air. All right, Pat Doris live for us. Pat, thank you very much. We will, of course, keep tracking this story tonight, so stay with us here online and through our mobile app for more information as it comes in. We're waiting on info on arrests.